Let us execute an immediate, sweeping analytical vector shift away from spatial horror anomalies, minimalist concrete room traps, and the geometry-bending timelines of psychological mountain retreats, and plunge straight into the high-octane, calculation-heavy tracking grids of small-town cold case excavation, weaponized true crime investigation loops, and the fiercely protective, dangerously fragile world of an endangered crime writer asset running a raw tactical survival loop. We are crossing the threshold directly into the hyper-monitored, paranoia-slicked parameters of an elite domestic suspense matrix, exploring the lethal analytical parameters of a devastating, secret-riddled missing persons network with You Can Tell Me, the exceptional, pulse-pounding romantic thriller premiere engineered by the absolute undisputed global sovereign of breathtaking procedural tension, double-blind familial leverage traps, and high-velocity tracking friction, Melinda Leigh. This high-stakes narrative tracking sequence delivers an exceptional look at an operational crossroad where a trauma-hardened primary investigative asset running an unyielding truth extraction loop, a calculating, manipulative shadow network of predatory killers hiding behind cold cases, and an absolute defense against an encroaching, deception-slicked suburban containment zone collide at terminal velocity. Let us map the strategic narrative grid. If you are an elite enthusiast of high-octane, slow-burn psychological mysteries where an endangered, hyper-observant female protagonist must navigate an absolute maze of rigged abduction triggers, corrupt marital alibi blueprints, and a deadly ring of active personal tracking frame-ups while running a blind survival loop inside a completely compromised domestic ecosystem where an analytical mind uses deep behavioral profiling, calculated investigator alliances, and absolute emotional stamina to outmaneuver an invisible predatory executioner asset, weaponizing institutional law enforcement shortcuts, and where the author utilizes an incandescent, meticulously paced investigative manhunt where a kidnapping survivor must retrace her missing podcaster friend's final steps, unearthing a fatal text and a double murder conspiracy diagnostic routine to test our hero's structural limits, this book is engineered to lock you in. Leigh completely dominates the high-precision domestic jeopardy meets suffocating procedural sabotage puzzles dynamic, capturing the heart-racing intellectual momentum, suffocating community paranoia, and heavy deductive depth popularized by franchise vargs like Kendra Elliott, Robert Dugoni, Lisa Regan, and Laura Griffin, while treating realistic legal layouts, complex dark possessive loyalty arcs, and protective high-density survivor extraction grids with absolute technical mastery. The narrative tracking grid zeroes in on the highly volatile, calculation-heavy baseline of our central legendary powerhouse creator asset, operating under a severe calculation-heavy handicap of post-traumatic stress boundaries, absolute childhood liquidation logs, and a hyper-visible targeting canvas within a local offender's tracking database. Behind our protagonists' rigorous true crime research footprints, defensive conversational shields, and sharp observation metrics lies an intricate matrix of hidden structural vulnerabilities, deeply buried abduction trauma, and sharp high-stakes tactical maneuvers. Her collective defense mechanisms are locked down tight following a horrific past timeline interception event, her entire analytical focus strictly consumed by monitoring sudden threat vectors from an encroaching internal sabotage network, parsing complex behavioral shifts in her daily social interaction loops, and shielding her vulnerable personal sovereignty node from being entirely wiped out by a ruthless elite cleanup offensive. The spark ignites when an unexpected high-frequency structural anomaly breaches her active scanning perimeter. On the exact 3-year anniversary of Olivia's horrific kidnapping survival, our primary asset registers a complete security breach when her longtime true crime podcaster friend Zoe March initializes an irregular blackout sequence and fails to show up for a scheduled crime scene walkthrough. Behind the community's pristine, peaceful civilian facade and the local police force's dismissive behavioral mapping style lies an intricate matrix of deep historical malice and a cold, calculation-heavy target containment blueprint. As the hostile adversarial investigation phases enter an increasingly lethal terminal tier across a ticking clock timeline, the unauthorized tracking of Zoe's abandoned electronic devices reveals that her latest cold case research loop was an explicitly engineered trap. The standard boundaries of routine independent reporting and peaceful civilian compliance protocols crumble, and our central protagonists run completely out of standard diplomatic escape vectors. She is thrust directly into an active invisible war behind closed suburban doors, where a highly manipulative adversarial asset launches aggressive countermeasures to permanently suppress her survival data stream and execute her complete systemic erasure. The tactical parameters instantly explode as their historical and survival warfare turns completely active, transforming the local recording studios, dark coffee shop parking lots, and private fortified residential rooms into a volatile psychological pressure cooker and a physical battle zone. Our protective, hyper-vigilant heroine, flanked by her fierce tech-savvy niece Nikki and her elite private investigator boyfriend Lincoln Sharp, is forced to deploy her massive intuitive tradecraft, elite behavioral mapping skills, and raw physical stamina to preserve her focus before her adversary's relentless calculation-heavy proximity containment phase permanently deletes her boundaries.
Armed with tactical breakdowns regarding old unsolved double homicides and the precise micro-pacing of predatory stalker patterns, the threat vector remains purposeful and resolute, determined to deploy deep evidence manipulation loops, continuous psychological gaslighting via straight ambushes, and persistent dominance to shatter her defense, only to realize her hardened survival protocols and shifting counter-narratives match their opponent's raw tactical steps step for step. Every midnight archival excavation of cold case files, every silent choice to stand off against an encroaching adversary behind standard geographical barriers, and every intense moment of channeling raw, unyielding survival mechanics chips away at her reliance on original peaceful rules. What follows is an exceptional high-stakes war of perspective, tactical position, and raw human grit. We watch the Predator Network's deceptive perimeters completely unwrapped as Melinda Leigh reveals that the true victory requires more than just surviving an initial street ambush or managing an invasive personal disclosure. It demands an absolute, uncompromising defense of individual dignity, personal truth, and systemic survival against a cold, calculating machine of domestic manipulation and psychopathic supremacy. While our central characters smooth over each other's psychological and defensive blind spots with devastating analytical force, creating a fiercely protective, absolute web of dark possessive loyalty around their building survival alliance, a brutal series of close-quarters tactical confrontations and high-stakes evidentiary breakthroughs shifts the clock into its terminal phase, proving that deep-seated obsession has tracked them to their final outpost. To survive the impending locked grid trap and permanently secure her sanctuary, our resilient protagonist must unleash an absolute, unyielding defense of her final boundary lines. It is a domestic suspense thriller, procedural noir, true crime mystery, and high-velocity contemporary puzzle masterpiece that treats deep relational logistics and intense structural friction with elite precision. The tension here burns with a sharp, calculation-heavy intensity. We are talking about that high-frequency, one unencrypted text warning triggers a fatal flooding storm showdown energy, where a sudden pause during an active franchise tactical briefing, an unexpected shift in an adversary's protective physical posture during a high-stakes standoff confrontation, or a heavy, possessive realization that an elite intelligence operative has completely mapped your personal coordinates carries massive structural weight. Leigh writes with an exceptionally fresh, vivid, and beautifully blunt voice, perfectly capturing the heavy, oppressive atmosphere of a private executive vault before a major corporate takeover, and the distinct, subtle scent of polished mahogany, expensive recording equipment, old county paper records, damp autumn rainstorms, dark adrenaline, and pure, unadulterated suspense. What truly elevates this contemporary franchise premiere marvel into elite territory is the author's unmatched ability to balance complex, high-stakes relationship dynamics and genuine protective power tradecraft alongside a breathtaking narrative pace and deep emotional hooks. Our protagonists don't rely on unbelievable, superficial Hollywood superhero action tropes. Their immense situational intelligence, strategic patience, and profound survival instincts match the complexity of the chaotic modern corporate and high society underworld they dominate step for step, making their choices to risk everything feel profoundly authentic and deeply gripping. The pacing moves with calculated momentum, tracking intense conversational standoffs and breathtaking tactical breakthroughs before ratcheting up to an absolute, jaw-dropping conclusion that delivers total, hard-earned advancement to their horizon. You Can Tell Me is the definitive, pro-level upgrade your high-stakes contemporary thriller and intense asset suspense library demands right now. It is elegant, immensely fast-paced, and utterly unputdownable. It proves that when your entire sanctuary is targeted by a cold, calculating institutional monster, the most revolutionary play you can execute is to lock your perimeters, trust your elite survival training, and fight like hell alongside your network to rewrite the data. So, secure your personal reading sanctuary, review your emotional defensive perimeters, open your Kindle, and prepare to track the flow.